Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a Supreme Court case that could reshape how the federal government works and what that means for your everyday life. Here's the situation. President Trump removed Rebecca Slaughter, a Democratic commissioner at the Federal Trade Commission, without giving a specific cause. Normally, the law says FTC commissioners can only be fired for very limited reasons, like neglect of duty, inefficiency, or misconduct. That decision has stirred up a legal storm because it goes directly against a nearly 90-year-old precedent called Humphrey's Executor v. United States. Back in 1935, the Supreme Court ruled that presidents couldn't just remove officials at independent agencies whenever they wanted. The court has allowed Slaughter's removal to go through for now, but they'll hear full arguments in December on whether to keep or overturn that old precedent. And that decision could affect you much more than you might think. To understand why this matters, it helps to know what the FTC actually does. The Federal Trade Commission is the agency that protects consumers and keeps businesses honest. Whenever you see an advertisement that has to be truthful, when a company isn't allowed to merge because it would create a monopoly, or even when your online privacy gets protected, that's the FTC at work. So the people who run the FTC aren't just bureaucrats sitting in offices. They make decisions that can shape prices at the store, the options you have when booking a flight, and even the rules tech companies have to follow when handling your personal data. That's why the question of whether the president can fire them at will is such a big deal. Now let's rewind to the 1930s. Franklin Roosevelt was president, and he tried to fire an FTC commissioner who didn't agree with his policies. That fight went to the Supreme Court in a case called Humphrey's Executor v. United States. Justice George Sutherland wrote the opinion for a unanimous court. The justices said Congress could create agencies that are independent of direct presidential control. That meant presidents couldn't remove commissioners just because they didn't like their views. Removal had to be for a serious reason, like misconduct or neglect of duty. The court explained that the FTC wasn't like a typical executive department. It was designed to be bipartisan and somewhat independent, acting partly like a legislature that writes rules and partly like a court that judges disputes. Because of that special role, the justices believed it needed freedom from political pressure coming directly from the White House. That decision in Humphrey's Executor has shaped how independent agencies operate for nearly a century. It's been cited over and over as the foundation for keeping regulators somewhat insulated from politics. Fast forward to today. President Trump removed Rebecca Slaughter without pointing to misconduct or neglect, essentially just for policy differences. Lower courts ruled that violated the law, but the Supreme Court stepped in and said the removal could stand for now while they review the case more fully this December. That move signaled that the justices are seriously considering whether Humphrey's Executor should still apply in the modern era. The justices who favor giving the president more power argue that things have changed since the 1930s. Agencies like the FTC don't just write a few rules anymore. They regulate huge industries, enforce complicated laws, and sometimes even act like mini executive branches of their own. Since they exercise that much power, the majority says it makes sense for the president, who is elected by the people, to have direct authority over them. They also argue that accountability is at stake. When voters elect a president, they expect that president to be able to carry out their policies. If unelected commissioners can block or slow those policies, and the president can't remove them, then the president isn't really able to do the job voters chose them to do. And finally, they point out that Humphrey's executor was decided at a very different time, when agencies looked smaller and acted differently. In their view, a rule written nearly 90 years ago might not fit the massive, modern administrative state we live with today. By letting Trump's removal of slaughter go through for now, they've already shown they're willing to rethink that old rule. Justice Elena Kagan, joined by Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, pushed back hard. She said Humphrey's executor is still the law of the land. Until the court explicitly overturns it, presidents have to follow it. In her view, allowing Trump to remove a commissioner without cause undermines the rule of law and Congress's design for the FTC. She warned that if presidents can sweep out commissioners just for disagreeing with them, independent agencies will lose the stability and neutrality they were built to have. Instead of being trusted referees, they could become extensions of whichever party happens to hold the White House. So what does all this mean for you? Imagine you're dealing with rising grocery prices, or you're booking a plane ticket, or you're worried about what a social media company does with your personal data. The FTC has a role in all of those things. If the court decides presidents can remove commissioners at will, the agency could swing more dramatically depending on who is in power. One president might aggressively regulate tech companies, while the next could relax those rules overnight. That means the protections you rely on could change quickly and unpredictably. It also shifts the balance of power in government. Congress created agencies like the FTC to be independent so that expertise and long-term stability would guide decisions instead of short-term politics. If that independence is weakened, then each new administration could use these agencies more as political tools than as neutral protectors of the public. And that affects businesses too. Companies want predictability. They want to know the rules won't suddenly flip. Without that, costs can go up, investments can get shaky, and ordinary people feel it in their bills. In short, the stakes aren't abstract. They show up in your daily life. When the court issues its ruling, a few paths are possible. The justices could keep Humphrey's executor intact, which would mean presidents still can't fire commissioners without cause. They could narrow it, saying some agencies stay independent while others don't, or they could overturn it completely, giving presidents wide power to remove officials at will. Whatever they choose, it will reshape the relationship between the presidency and the agencies that regulate everything from food and medicine to technology and banking. At the end of the day, this case isn't just about Rebecca Slaughter or even the FTC. It's about the balance of power between presidents and the independent agencies that shape so much of everyday life. From the prices we pay, to the rules companies have to follow, to the protections we count on as consumers. If the court sticks with Humphrey's executor, those agencies will keep operating with a degree of independence, guided by expertise and long-term stability. If the court overturns it, presidents will gain sweeping new power to reshape these agencies overnight, which could mean quicker action, but also less predictability. Whichever way the court rules, the decision will echo for decades. Some legal scholars are even calling it the biggest test of presidential power since the New Deal era. So here's what I'd love to know from you. Do you think agencies are stronger when they're independent? Or should presidents be able to fire officials whenever they want to push their policies through? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because we'll be here to unpack the ruling when it comes down. This isn't just another case. It could be the biggest shift in government power in nearly a century. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.